start this. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Like I was saying, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to be respectful of it and get you back to doing what you are doing in your schools. My name is Cindy Chang, and I am the programs professional over computer science with the Nevada Department of Education. And I'm going to go over briefly the changes that are coming down the road in computer science education that relates specifically to elementary administrators in this session, but I'll touch on a few things that are across the board. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we go. All right, so let's get going here. These are the topics that I'm going to touch on. We're going to have a little bit of background history, how we got to where we are. We'll talk about Senate Bill 200 and that is the law that was put into action in this last legislative session and requirements imposed by that. We'll talk about funding that came along with Senate Bill 200 and computer science initiatives. We're going to talk about what that looks like implementing in our schools, computer science pathway suggestion. There's some changes coming down with teacher endorsement and licensing that do not primarily affect elementary at all. So I'll just put that out there, but it'll be for your reference for your colleagues. I'll provide some resources for you and your teachers, and then we'll talk a little bit about the refresh that's going to be coming down with the technology standards, and then have an opportunity to ask questions again at the end. All right, so a little bit of history. So back in 2015, the K-12 computer science framework development began. This framework was developed with input from K-12 educators across the nation, researchers, higher ed, industry backing was included to build this framework, national framework that talks about how to build standards, how to build and implement programs in the district, and so forth. You can Google K-12 CS framework and be able to find out all of the information about that. But the important thing I want to point out there is that Nevada was also part of this development, as we had a computer science subcommittee or task force that became part of this review of the framework. And so when we talk about computer science at a national level, it's important to note that Nevada has been there from the start. So that is something that I like to put out there, that we are actually there at the grassroots. In 2016, the framework was published. So this is helping to inform computer science initiatives in all of the states in the nation. Also in 2016, Nevada joined the National ESEP Alliance, which is expanding computing education pathways. And what this has allowed our state to do is to tap into resources, network with other folks in other states who are also implementing computer science initiatives. We have resources to studies that are being conducted, monthly meeting calls, annual in-person meetings, sharing of best practices. It's really helped us to frame what this looks like in our state moving forward. In May of last year, the Department of Ed at the state level created a computer science position that I now hold, so as to have a point person who could help navigate the waters with the policies, the regulations, help create a team together to develop standards and so forth, which I'll talk about in a minute. Also, June of last year is when Senate Bill 200 was signed into law by Governor Sandoval. July, so last summer, this task force that I spoke about earlier from Nevada became an official computer science subcommittee underneath the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology. And they have some oversight responsibilities that I'll talk about when we get into the bill. Also in July, the National CSTA, that's Computer Science Teachers Association, announced its new standards that were built off of that framework that we talked about previously. Last August, our very own Nevada State K-12 computer science standards were developed, again, built off of the national CSTA standards. In September of last year, professional development began for our Computer Science Discoveries course that's at the middle school level, and then the Computer Science Principles course, which is at the high school level. We also have continuing professional development for Computer Science Fundamentals, which is the elementary code.org curriculum offering, and we've actually had that training going on for several years in the state. In December of last year, our FY18 funding allocation process began, along with the requirements in Senate Bill 200. There was also provided funding allocations for the biennium, and so those allocations went out for the FY18 last year. In January of this year, the K-12 computer science standards were approved by the state board, and they are going through the regulatory process and should be complete at the next at the June 8th board. And then March, so just last year, at the COPS workshop, the Commission on Professional Standards, they approved the changes, proposed changes to move forward on the computer science licensing endorsements, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And then just this month, the FY19 funding allocation process began for the second set of allocated funds from Senate Bill 200. So that's kind of a little bit of history where we were and where we are right now. Okay, so our mission for these initiatives, fondly known as CS4NV, Computer Science for Nevada, is to provide engaging and rigorous computer science education for all students, no matter what their gender is, their race, if they have any disabilities, what school they attend, where that be suburban, rural, whatever, that there is equity across the board on this computer science education, and that it will better prepare them for the digital age that they live in, the post-secondary experiences, careers, just being a member of society, basically, with today. We want our students to not just be the users of the technology that we all know that they use, but that they understand clearly what's going on underneath, that they can use that technology, different ones, to be creators of it. And so that's where our motivation lies. Our overall vision is that our students are informed citizens. They can engage in public discourse on computer science topics in an intelligent fashion, that they can develop as users and learners and creators, like I said, of this computer science knowledge and artifacts. But they better understand the role of computing in the world around them and how that affects their lives and the lives of the other people. And then also to learn, perform, and express themselves in all subject areas and interests that they have. As we see more and more as technology and computer science is in everything that they do, it becomes important that they have a clear understanding. So I love this slide with the robots. So I hear all the time, so robots are going to replace all the jobs that we have in the next 10 years. No, they won't. However, all occupations are going to have some element of computer technology associated with them, and they're going to require this new skill set, separate from knowing how to use them. but they're going to need to know more. But I can tell you that studies have shown, and if you look at any of our larger industries as well, even some of the smaller ones, the fast food industry, that jobs that are on some level of routine, repetitive, and predictable are at most risk to be replaced by technology. So this is a concern. Are we really preparing our students as they leave our K-12 education with the necessary skills that they need in this digital age? And it really does start at our elementary level, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so Nevada's trying to do its part to better prepare our students. We can't tell them what those jobs are going to look like when our little kindergartners graduate in, I don't know, 2030, whatever it is, that we don't know what those are going to look like, but we do know that they're going to have a high component of computer science and technology involved with them. So it's an important skill to have. It's a life skill. The impetus for Senate Bill 200 Section 3 that we'll talk about is it was this. We're testing our students, as you know very well, that at a younger and younger age. And we're testing them, and I've got some of those listed there. But the question became, are we really testing them on their knowledge of the subject matter itself, or are we testing them on any skill gaps that they may have in how to use the computer? Testing a student who has computers in their home, uses devices all the time, has since they were probably out of the womb, versus students who do not have those devices and experiences available in their home. Testing those two online will most definitely propose this gap. And so to provide that equity of access to computer technology education at the time when our students need it the most was the reason for Section 3. And we'll talk about that because that very much impacts you folks at the elementary level. So on this slide, I have 3 links. The first link is to the official Senate Bill 200 document, the legislative in its entirety. The second link is on the Nevada Department of Education site, where I have it listed, the different sections and the changes in Senate Bill 200. I have them listed by section, and it's the highlights of what that section is speaking about. And then the third link is to the STEMhub website, and on there I have Senate Bill 200 broken down by the effective date. So within the different sections, there may be multiple effective dates when that regulation needs to take place. So what I did was group them all together by those dates, so it's easier for you to see. All right, so I want to take you out to the STEMhub site, and we'll go to the state advocacy page. So it's stemhub.nv.gov/cs4nv. I'll provide these slides for you, and we'll talk about at the end where you can get these. But so you go on the main menu, CS4NV is the link here, and you've got resources for students that will be built out, educators, we'll talk about that in a minute, industry, resources, events that are coming up. Hopefully I can hear from the different districts and things that are happening there so I can post them as well. But the state advocacy page is what I want to go to first, and we'll talk about that. So here's where I have Senate Bill 200 broken down by effective date. So for example, last July 1st, these items became effective. So for example, these first two are more so slated for secondary, high school to be exact. The third one talks about how the computer science subcommittee became part of the advisory council, and there's a link to the board members there. And then it shows the appropriations, the funding that came from Senate Bill 200. So Clark received 700,000, Washoe 100,000, and then the rurals and charters received 200,000. And that is in a non-competitive grant allocation manner. So rurals and charters fill out applications and go through the process. And I have a slide that kind of talks about that. But you'll want to, excuse me, you want to talk with your district grant folks on what their vision is for your district and how those funds are being allocated. But you can see the breakdown this year of where that money went. But this next effective date affects you folks the most. So effective July 1st, so this July 2018, the first one, before beginning 6th grade, all students are required to receive instruction in computer education and technology. Okay, so for this coming year. Again, going back to the discussion about the online testing and are we testing the subject matter or the student skill level, the lawmakers felt that it was important to move this up so that our elementary students, sorry about that, are more prepared for what's coming. And we'll talk about this. What I want to talk about is this portion, computer education and technology. And I'm going to show you a slide, hopefully here, that can make some sense of that. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So when in the bill, you see that it talks about computer education and technology. It's talking about this right here. So we have this subject area that is broad. And currently, what was only, well, not currently, but in the past, prior to the bill, what was there was just the K-12 technology standards, which are built off of the ISTE standards, correct? So these were dated, the current ones are 2010. So what Senate Bill 200 also did was add computer science and computational thinking to the Nevada Computer Education and Technology subject area. So now you have these two prongs. You have the technology standards and you have the computer science standards that are working together to create this computer education technology. Okay, so I like to point that out because sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. So whenever you see computer education technology, it's talking about that main group with the two prongs, the computer science and the ed tech. Okay, so then the next one is the high school graduation requirement. So that is secondary. Here, the third one, we have the FY19 appropriations for the bill. We have Clark, who's going to receive 800,000, Washoe 200,000, and then the rurals and charters have doubled. They now have 400,000 to work with on a non-competitive grant allocation manner. Effective this July, computer science and computer education and technology professional development must occur. As I stated in our history, we already have professional development that's been going on for anywhere from 1 to 4 years, depending on which curriculum level you're talking about. But this PD will be an ongoing component of all of this for sure. The next one, it is effective, says it adds computer science and computational thinking to the computer ed tech standards, which I just explained is that second level there. And then also the department, in consultation with the computer science subcommittee, will review all instruction and make recommendations to the Nevada State Board. Okay, so that is part of it as well. Okay, I did have a question that came about. Is Senate Bill 200 allocations applicable to private schools? The answer is no. Currently, it is only allotted for our public schools and our public charters. And so not the private schools. Okay, currently the approved curriculum for computer science by the state board includes the code.org suite, so the CS fundamentals for elementary, CS discoveries for middle, and CS principles for high school. If there is other computer science curriculum, such as Project Lead the Way or something else that comes along that districts would like to implement, say at your schools a teacher approaches you that they would like to use such and such, then you let your district curriculum folks know, and they can go through that process of getting it vetted and approved through the state. Basically, we want to make sure that everything is in alignment with the standards so that when your teachers are using that curriculum, they can confidently know that they are touching all the standards as well. Okay. Any questions on that? I know that's a big component of what you folks need to make changes on. No questions? All right. Let me just go back up here to educators while I'm on this site. And I have professional development opportunities listed here by grade level. So this is the fundamentals course that I mentioned. It's a one-day, I think they've typically done it on Saturdays, but I believe that RPDP is also going into the schools and doing those on professional development days with the teachers and so forth. Reach out to them. They're down here, and here's a link to the curriculum itself. Okay. We also, here are licensing requirements if you would like to look at that, the changes that are being proposed right now. These do not affect elementary teachers. They do not need any additional endorsements to teach computer science and computational thinking. We definitely encourage the professional development, though, to help them with that. But this is just for your reference. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that you can find on this site. All right, so back to our presentation. Let me go back here. Okay. So also on there are links to the computer science standards. You can find them on the department's website. If you go to, here I am on the department site, Educators, Nevada Academic Content Standards, choose Computer Science out of the sidebar, and then you'll get to this page. On here we have the computer science standards, and they are broken down into the full complete set of standards, and then there's a condensed version so you can see the transition from concept across grade levels. The proposed K-12 standards, and I will mention they'll remain proposed or draft until they finish the regulatory process, which will happen June 8th at the next state board meeting. But on the proposed standards, you have at the bottom, well, the elementary is K through 5, so it's by grade level. And at the secondary, 6 through 8 is a grade band, and 9 through 12 is a grade band, because obviously they have different needs in those grades. But each one of them has connections at the bottom that tie into our other Nevada academic core subjects, so math, ELA, science, and social studies. So what that would say is if a kindergarten teacher is touching on this computer science standard, it also applies to this math standard. So hoping to build those connections to make it easier for our teachers to teach the subject matter. Okay, so you can find those on there. With these standards, the 5 major concepts that are covered are algorithms and programming, computing systems, data and analysis, impacts of computing and networks and the internet. So as you can see, it's not just about coding and programming, but it's so much more. I mean, even impacts of computing alone, what is it? What are the impacts on society? What are the impacts on my own home, in my life, with password protection and so forth. We can't start young enough with our password protection, for sure. You can see the sub-concepts that are also embedded throughout the standards. And I will say with especially at the younger age group, that a lot of these lessons can be done what we call in an unplugged fashion. They don't need to be on computers all the time. A lot of it can be done in the classroom, and then perhaps they get to a computing lab for a block of time. And we'll talk about in a minute what that may or may not look like in your schools, in your district. Okay. So here's what computer science is and what it isn't. Computer science is understanding why and how computers work, creating programs rather than just using them. And those are some examples right there. Programming an app or creating interactive data visualizations. Big data is huge right now. At the elementary level, having them practice with gathering data, different color shoes or marbles or something like that, and how it relates together, and how to analyze and evaluate, and well, how do I visualize this, and then moving it onto a computer in an interactive visualization way. So that's computer science, and of course the impact on society. What computer science isn't is just using computers to perform everyday tasks. So keyboarding, doing an internet search, making a PowerPoint for my English class, or editing photos or movies, or using apps that are created by somebody else. This would fall more under our technology standards versus our computer science standards. So it's important to understand the difference. And again, here's that visual of where the two form that complete computer education technology subject area. All right, so I talked about this implementation here, the impact that this section of the bill has on our primary grades here. Those are the two that are mostly directed to you folks. Here's just a graph of the allocation breakdown from FY18. And then FY19 is currently in swing for the allocation. I put this in here just so as you in your sites are thinking about the things that the resources that your teachers will need to implement these two items here, that you are able to talk with your district in an informed manner. You can go out here to the grants page. I have listed the application there, so you can take a look at what that grant is actually looking for. I will tell you that it is not your typical ed tech grant where you're asking for equipment, and then maybe there's some PD associated with how to use that equipment or the software on that. It's not like that. As you can see, there's a heavy component of professional development in Senate Bill 200, because computer science is such a new subject for many of our educators, and so you want to make sure that they have that support and that training and knowledge that they need. So if you are asking for equipment through your district, then there needs to be strong professional development for your teachers behind it. They need to know how to implement computer science and computational thinking in their classroom, as well as with your new requirements for the technology component. The request for applications open March 30th. It ends the end of this month, so we're coming down to a close here. You can see the rest of those dates. approved expenditures should be ready for July 1st, and then they have until June 30th to spend those funds. All right, so again, on the educator page of STEM Hub, I already went through these things. All right, so the question you may or may not have is, well, where do I put this computer education technology course that's required prior to 6th grade? What does that look like in my school? What does that look like in my district? Again, it's going to look quite different in your various situations. Currently, like I mentioned, the computer science component there, the standards are broken down by grade level. So a suggested computer science pathway would be to include those standards across the board in each grade level. How that looks again in your school is vastly different, so I couldn't begin to tell you specifically to do this or that. But I do know that as concepts are built upon each other year by year, the students are more successful in absorbing that knowledge and building upon it as they go, as opposed to seeing it for the first time in either middle school or high school for one time at an elective. So that I can tell you. But if this is done in unplugged fashion by your elementary teachers in their classroom, and then they do some computer time in the lab with a tech specialist or perhaps with the librarian. Again, it depends on the resources that you have available to you and how that looks in your school. And I'm happy to help out any way that I can in brainstorming ways that we could think outside the box and make that happen. So please do reach out to me and your district with that. And then your tech standards as well would be incorporated in much the same fashion. So with your your keyboarding skills, introductory keyboarding skills, your Google Apps for education practice with slides and Google Docs and so forth, Word, Excel, just very introductory at this point, giving them just more time to practice those skills as they go. Okay, so I kind of touched on this overall. Basically, our goal is just that our K-5 students have the necessary foundation that they can be successful as they enter their secondary education in middle school and high school. And these skills are going to prepare them better for that. All right. Before I get into resources, does anyone have any questions? I haven't seen anything in the chat yet, so I think you're probably absorbing all of this, right? There's a lot, I know. But please do let me know if you have any questions. All right, so resources. We have the Computer Science Teachers Association, CSTA, that national organization that I mentioned earlier that has created the national standards. We have a chapter in our state now, brand new as of last year. This slide shows the members of the executive board. I would encourage everyone, from admin to educator to district folks. I'm a member as a state leader as well, to join this free chapter. They have meetings often. They have resources available. They can provide mentors for your teachers. They can. They are talking about having a repository for teachers to glean information from and resources for their classes, units to teach, and so forth. So a lot of resources will be available as this builds out. I already went through the STEM Hub CS4NV pages. One thing I want to mention is there is a place at the top where you can sign up through email, and then you'll have all of these updates sent to you as these things develop. This is a very fluid moment because we are rolling out a lot of things, and so it would be the best way to keep in the loop with that. And I'd love to have folks contribute to the content. On the department website, I have information on computer science and the initiatives here. There's also a link to the subcommittee members. Also, frequently asked questions. So maybe you don't exactly know what to ask right now, but go through that first, and that you don't know what you don't know. Maybe that will answer some questions that you hadn't thought about or that you have right now but are not quite sure how to phrase it. There will also be guidance documents up there to help with moving forward these initiatives. You are probably already familiar with the Instructional Materials Resource Center because that's where there are resources for our other core areas, the math, ELA, science, social studies, and so forth. We will have a build out for computer science now as well. So we'll start to build some materials there, resources for everyone. So that will be a good resource for you. Another resource for your teachers, ISTE, of course, has a lot of changes that they are going through. I actually did receive an email for someone just recently that was talking about the technology refresh for ISTE. I have it up on the screen right now. They are trying to better support teachers who will be teaching computer science and computational thinking. So even that is coming around too. So there are many national groups across the board that are working together to provide resources as these things roll out, because this is not just a Nevada issue. This is a national issue that across the board our students are not computer science literate, and it is a scary place to be in that respect. Here's a resource for your teachers as well, if that will help them start to think outside the box and some of the things that they can use inside their classrooms. We also have a computer science summit coming up. It's our first one that we've never had this in the state before. And we're going to be host to teams from each of the districts, the charter schools. We're going to have our higher education folks will be there from our main universities and colleges in the state, because really what we do, what you do, beginning in elementary, is then pushing the bar all the way up. And so our higher ed, the institutions are curious about what we're doing down here and how they need to better prepare in the next few years for our students coming in. Dr. Canavero is going to talk about our Nevada, computer science in Nevada, and what we're doing and where we're going and the numbers and so forth. He's our state superintendent. And then we also have a national officer from our code.org national affiliate who will be talking about computer science as it relates to the nation and where Nevada fits in that larger picture. And we're going to have resources on, integrating computer science in the other core areas, for example. I did have a question. Let's see, will we be able to order the computational thinking book with some of our funding? Absolutely. You just have to speak to your folks who are in charge of that grant money. If you're going to present it like at a professional development situation with your teachers on your teacher in service day and give them along with some professional development, absolutely. Absolutely, that would fall in line with that. Thank you for asking that question. Whoops, too fast. Okay, and then lastly, I mentioned that the computer and technology standards that we currently have in place are from 2010, so those are like the dinosaur ages. So we're going to begin the revise of that this fall. And if there's anyone in your schools or in your group that would like to be considered for part of that review team, please do reach out to me and let me know, and I'll make sure that they get an application personally from me, because we would love to have all levels of folks involved in this, because this is a K-12 standard, so we need all voices. Okay, and that is all that I have prepared for you. I am open now to any other questions or concerns that you have in any way that I can provide support for you. I'm going to leave my information on the screen there. So, are there any other questions regarding this technology course prior to 6th grade? You know, how computer science and ed tech work together? Anything like that? Please don't hesitate to ask. Go ahead and unmute your mic or write something in the chat. All right. Did I cover it all that well? That's good to know. Well, that's all that I have for you. I just want to let you know that I am here as a resource for both you and for your teachers. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me. There's my contact information. I will get back to you as quickly as I can. I'm usually pretty quick, unless I am traveling or sick, because it was a bad year last year. So please do reach out and let me know any way that I can help you. I have come from the classroom. I was there for 12 years. I understand that this may be a little daunting, especially for our elementary teachers. And I just want them to know that that the resources are there, that they are they're going to realize that they have already been teaching computer science fundamentals with things that they're already doing, even as much as when they teach Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and they're talking about repeating the chorus. That includes computer science terminology such as looping, because that's a loop, you're repeating, and a function, that's a block of code that can be used over and over again. That's pretty much what a chorus is. So once they become comfortable with that and understanding that they have already been doing these, they just didn't know it, they will be a lot more relaxed and comfortable as they implement these standards in their curriculum. So anyways, like I said, please reach out to me if you need anything. I am here for you to help you, and I really appreciate you taking time. Thank you so much. Take care. You're welcome.